Call the meeting to order being 1:30. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Public comment? I didn't get any public comment. All right, we'll move on to 4, approval of the December 6, 2022 Public Safety Committee meeting minutes. Have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Motion carried. We'll move on to 5A, policy issues discussion and potential committee determination. Consideration of resolution supporting Justice Coalition biennial budget requests. Administrator Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This really relates directly to the work of this committee. You guys have talked, quite honestly, about probably 75% of the issues that are brought up within this resolution, and the resolution itself is a draft resolution that was prepared by the Counties Association, and I know a communication went out. But essentially what the Counties Association is doing is they are attempting to have resolutions in support of this request, the body of requests from this coalition from each of the counties in the state of Wisconsin. The coalition itself, as you can see, is made up from prosecutors, defense attorneys through the Public Defender's Office, the Department of Justice, and the Judiciary. So really addressing some of the struggles that exist across the justice system. With respect to DAs, it's fully funding pay progression and making some market-based adjustments for pay. Similarly, within the Public Defender's Office, there's investments relative to IT service within the DA's office. I'm not going to go through all of these things, but across the board, it really is a request from this coalition that is attempting to inform the governor's proposed budget, and Wisconsin Counties Association put together the draft resolution. We made a couple of changes just to make it specific to Marathon County. Probably the most significant one was inserting the word marathon throughout the resolution. But happy to answer any questions you might have about it. And we certainly have people from the district attorney's office here if you need to have any questions answered.
All right, thank you. With that, any questions, I guess? All right, with that, we'll move on to 6A.
There would be a motion to move that to county board so that the resolution would be adopted by the full board at your next meeting.
Okay. Have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion made in second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh. Got it. Okay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
6A, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. Update on jail food service and potential amendment of the 2023 CIP for food service related projects. Mr. Leonard.
I think Sheriff Billup and I will take this jointly, but the short explanation is, and I think we made the committee aware of this and the county board aware of this, one of the things that the sheriff is certainly vested with and really has the responsibility to do is provide for care of individuals within our jail, and a big part of that is food service. And Chad can talk briefly about kind of the prerequisite things that led us down the path of trying to work with North Central Healthcare to deliver that service. And after he does that, we'll talk about kind of what the next steps look like.
So if you recall, I believe we spoke with this group about the fact that the cost of our food service from our vendors had gone up substantially, almost 25%. That was going to be a $167,000 increase to the levy. So what we did was we approached county administration and said, is there a better way of doing this? Is there a local way that we can provide a similar service to our inmates without having that money go to a vendor? And one of the ideas we floated was seeing if North Central Healthcare, who, as you know, we are one and the same, we are government together, would be interested in providing that service. That way, any dollars that we have that we're going to spend on food or any of those types of resources would basically be a government-to-government payment for services. North Central, Gary Olson was great. We worked together, and we are currently receiving food service in the jail from North Central Healthcare. I will say that there's growing pains, as there is with any new service and anytime we work through those, but we are continuing to move that forward. The one thing that we know is a challenge is that when they took on the jail, they were going to have problems with space, and specifically freezer and cooler space because of the volume of food that they're going to be handling for our jail. We provide roughly 600 meals a day up in our jail. We're providing 3 meals a day to our inmates. So Chief Deputy Milhausen will be meeting with North Central Healthcare again tomorrow in order to start looking at what things do we need to do, what hurdles do we have in front of us that we need to continue to work through. One other thing that you should be aware of, and I just want to make sure I mention, is that one of the other deciding factors we had was that there was going to be a fee from the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, a convenience fee, if you will, for us utilizing their kitchen in order to prepare our meals for here in Marathon County. So at the end of the day, we were just slightly ahead of the game going to North Central Healthcare. If we would have added in that cost of the fee from Lincoln County, it would have cost us an additional right around $50,000 off the top in order to maintain that service out of Lincoln County.
So, thanks, Sheriff Billup. The reason that we wanted to at least bring this in front of you now is, as Chad indicated, there are a couple of things that we're going to need to address. This short-term fix of having North Central Healthcare take this on with inadequate cooler and freezer space is just that. It is short-term. If this is the long-term solution, we're going to need to make some facility modifications down in North Central Healthcare. They can't be doing the things they're doing now. It just isn't cost-effective. But right now, we're, like Chad said, going to work through some of those growing pains to see if it'll work. We have a good understanding of what the facility modifications we think we would need. Our facilities people have worked with an architect to kind of rough that out, and the cost of that is just a little bit under $400,000 for those facility renovations. But as you see, when you talk about, from the sheriff's office perspective, we have about I thought it was like $59,000 or just about $50,000 is what we would be saving. The sheriff's office would be saving annually when you look at North Central doing it under our current understanding versus a vendor. And on top of that, you put North Central in their current model has built in about $30,000, I believe, of revenue or cost buffer for delivering that service. So we're going to assess that math, that about $80,000. You'll see your return on investment is in that 4-year, 3, 4, 5-year area, depending on how things will work out. We'll bring that back to you if the route is going to be sticking with North Central Healthcare long-term. But right now, that's kind of where we are, again, when we're looking at that $80,000 and a $400,000 upfront cost for those renovations. We don't have for sure numbers yet. In addition to the numbers, we're looking at some transportation pieces because that's the other thing, the other hurdle we're having to work through, but wanted to at least bring it to your attention that we're potentially looking at modifying that 2023 capital improvement plan to do that capital project if our initial projections are proved accurate. And if they're not, we're going to have to go out and do the same thing that we've historically done, right? Which is put out an RFP and find the best number for service. But we've talked a lot about the labor market at this committee and at the county board. It's a challenging labor market for everyone, and right now, if you have an outside service through a vendor, your costs are going up, and jail food service was right on that list.
Is the cost that we're saving, is that against the increase that we would be seeing, or what the current budget was for last year?
Against the increase we would be seeing.
And one thing that we consider, and we're kind of, our hands are kind of tied on, is the fact that we don't have a full functioning kitchen in our jail. So if we were to work with a vendor, we would be forced into one of two options if North Central Healthcare doesn't work. One would be to go back to the previous vendor and then have to pay Lincoln County in order to basically give us space or pay for the kitchen use like we were going to be doing. The other option that we've had vendors propose in the past is that we create some sort of a storefront kitchen. So I'll just use it as an example. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but we've got Burger King right across the street here that's closed down. You could say, we want to use the old Burger King in order to prepare our jail food and then bring it across the street and have it served our inmates. We would have to go somewhere, and I'm sure that the vendor would say, yeah, well, that's not the right kitchen equipment. They don't have the right cleaning equipment. There's a lot that would go into this. So right now, we're looking at the most cost-effective option for the county is what we're working through.
And when Chad talked about growing pains, I mean, we are having them, and the kitchen at North Central Healthcare, and it's brand new, but it was designed with the understanding that it was going to provide meals for an inpatient hospital, medically monitored treatment, and a nursing home. And we're essentially, this is ballpark, but you're essentially doubling the size, almost doubling the size of the number of meals they have to provide. So it's not unreasonable that we would need to make some facility modifications, but we'll come back with a refined plan. We just, if I were in your shoes, I would want to know sooner rather than later, if there was going to be a significant capital outlay. But we'll lay out the options for the committee and ultimately for the board to make the decision on which route to go.
One more question. Is there any chance that the county could provide their own meals?
Well, sure, but I think to Sheriff Billups' point, that we don't have a kitchen in the jail which to staff to cook the food that we would then serve. And we'll evaluate everything. It has been my experience that we are well served by partnerships for people who are already doing it at a reduced cost. I think that's what you see with North Central Healthcare. They could deliver the meals, at least based on our current understanding, at a lower rate, lower cost per meal than what we were quoted through our previous vendor. And when we keep those funds within the kind of county family, within departments, you have a benefit because that profit margin on the private side can go into things at North Central, like servicing the debt. Even if the sheriff's office saves the $50,000, or if we sent the $50,000 over there even, let's just use that as an example. You would much prefer to have North Central Healthcare realize an $80,000 profit on their side from this endeavor than Lance's Catering, because at the end of the day, the county ultimately holds the financial responsibility relative to the debt service that we've talked about at the county board. But to your specific question about can we do this directly? Yes, absolutely. The struggle we have is the same facility struggle we're having with North Central. Right now, we don't have an adequate kitchen facility in which to prepare those meals. Is that adequately laid out?
Any further questions for Sheriff Billup or for Administrator Leonard? Go ahead, Gene.
Is there room to expand at North Central? You said this is all new, all their kitchens are new?
There's room outside of the current footprint of the kitchen.
Adjacent?
Yeah, I believe it's be an exterior pad. I haven't been all that involved in it. But
So what would ultimately happen is they have a relatively new cooler/freezer. I don't remember exactly which one, but it is significantly further away from where the food prep occurs. It's, I think, on the other end, on the other side. So there's a lot of trucking food down the hallways in North Central that's taking place for us right now. In essence, what they would do is they would work with a contractor to take that freezer cooler and move it. So you would take the current equipment that we have, move it over to where the current kitchen is at, but they would do that by knocking a wall out on the exterior, putting out a pad, putting that freezer on it, and then having that freezer closer to where, or actually right in the kitchen where the food prep takes place. That's what they're working on, figuring out if we're going to do something like that.
Does North Central get a break ordering more food supplies I mean, I would think we would save money there too because there'd be more volume. I
Yes.
don't know if they get, you know,
They
the
do.
more they order, the cheaper it is.
They told us that they do,
Okay.
that is one of the considerations as well.
So the 400,000, is that included with the construction and moving and everything?
That's everything. That's
Okay.
moving it. There's a lot that I'm like $400,000, but what I didn't realize is that when you move a freezer like that, there's certain prep that needs to be done to the ground because of frost, heave, and all kinds of things that I don't think of. That's why we had facilities get involved. But yes, it would be start to finish full project.
And just to clarify, I mean, that's our estimate. We haven't put that out for RFP because we don't know that that's the way we're going. But a lot like the CIP process that we talked about through the budget, you know, we put a number on paper. It's an educated number, but, you know, I would hope that we'd come in below that. But just like jail food service, right? I mean, we're at when you put something out for bid for a project, you're at the mercy of the responses you get. And right now, our best estimate is just under that $400,000 mark.
Typically in projects like those, the freezer actually comes apart. You're taking it apart in panels. So you take the panels apart, you move the whole thing, then you got a condensing unit that's going to go, you got to locate that somewhere else. Then you have a head that actually is a cooling head inside the unit, so they're not easy to move, so. Any further questions? Go ahead.
And are you gonna plan it for future expansion in case you need more room? Just in case.
Well, it's tough to plan for future expansion. I mean, it's built. Right now, I mean, they have moved into the nursing home. So this would be,
Okay.
this would be a renovation to a newly constructed space, which, again, I wish I had a crystal ball and could have foreseen the significant increase in jail meals. But when the original North Central Healthcare Master Plan was delivered to the county board back in 2018, I think, the idea, one of the guiding principles there was to set the nursing home up in such a way that if the county, at some future date said, you know, we don't want to be in the nursing home business anymore, you could essentially sever that off and have it operated by a private entity. So the kitchen that's built for the nursing home was really right-sized for the number of beds at the nursing home. So short explanation, it's too small if we want them to do essentially double the meals. So that was why we're in the position we were in. It's not that a poor decision was made, it was the right decision at that time based on the information we had, and now the situation is different. But the short answer to your question, it's tough to build for future tough to plan for future expansion. It's already an existing space. There's other associated activities that take place around that kitchen. And it's really not too much in terms of a kitchen remodel, it's the food storage. I mean, it's gonna be tight in there if this is the route we go. But right now, our best understanding is that North Central can make that work.
Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're actually going to North Central Healthcare tomorrow, and that meeting is going to be over there? Because that's what they were initially talking about, so that we can see that kitchen space.
That's my understanding, yeah.
So he'll be over there tomorrow. But when we initially had our conversations, before we actually started to do the physical work, they thought that the prep space was fine, that wasn't the issue. It was that cooler space that really is what's driving the issues. So
So is the cooler, is it an older cooler, or is it a cooler that we just purchased and installed in the new addition?
Well, I believe it's two coolers, actually, we're talking about two separate issues there. The kitchen that was built adjacent to the nursing home or within the nursing home proper is new. There was a previous kitchen on the campus in another area. That kitchen still has some of the older units in it, and to your point, it is the panel cooler and freezer panel units. So the understanding is to do what you're talking about, build the pad exterior and move that already existing cooler freezer unit to a new location. So it's an older unit in the old kitchen location. being moved closer to the new kitchen with the new equipment. That's my understanding right now, but I too, I'm gonna.
so old that it's not worth doing.
Right, not so old that it's not worth doing, because my understanding, and I'd certainly defer to you, is that it is a panel unit, and there's nothing wrong at this point with there may be some repairs needed to various pieces, I'm sure, that's what we'll find, but it's not something that has no value. But we'll learn more, and it's like Chad said, right now, this is the best information we have, and we'll bring you more when we have a concrete plan, but I wouldn't come with a project that's $400,000 without them doing this for a while, because our belief right now is that it's the food storage, cooler and freezer space, but I want some proven delivery of food and food prep to show that that's the only real issue. If we move these coolers and then, never mind, our prep space is too small, well, we can't go expanding prep space because the kitchen is already hemmed in with everything else. So we want to give them a little while to kind of work through those growing pains. And like Chad said, I know there are some.
Sure, but I just wanted to clarify that the meeting tomorrow is here. Next week, Thursday, we have a meeting at their facility.
Thank you.
And then just so everyone's aware, when you do those types of things, I totally understand what they're saying. So if you have a panelized cooler, you can expand that per what you said. That's something that I'm sure the facility services manager would look at. You can, but that means you have to upsize your condensing unit to make sure you got enough tonnage to cool that space. So depending on how old the unit is, type of freon that, there's a bunch of factors that they're gonna have to look at when they do this, but it's 100%, I agree that you have to see if the prep area is big enough before you start moving these things, because they're kind of a pain. Go ahead.
Are they transporting hot meals too? And do they have the equipment for doing that?
We do.
That many, you
Yes,
do?
the jail had a lot of that equipment. We have a lot of equipment here left on site for even like washing dishes and doing some of that. So we're reusing everything we have. We took a van that was once owned by the sheriff's office, and we transferred that to North Central Healthcare for the purposes of transporting that food here to the courthouse. So we're trying to, as best we can, use what we have to keep this going.
Go ahead.
Are we paying North Central Healthcare to prepare the meals, or is that just included in the Marathon County kind of North Central Healthcare meal plan?
Well, that would be separate. We would be paying them because it's a 5142. So per what Chad said, it is part of Marathon County, but you have to understand that Lincoln and Langlade are also included. So we would be paying ourselves, kind of, I guess you could say, but yeah, there would be money swapping hands.
I think the best example that I would use is, you are shifting money across budgets, very similar to what we did with the Parks Department and Highway Department with paving a park road. I mean, Highway their budget was supplemented with the true cost of delivering that service. It would have otherwise lived in the Parks Department budget for them to contract out with an RFP, and that's kind of what we'd be doing here. The Sheriff's Office budget has a line item for jail food service. Historically, we had contracted out to procure that service for the reasons we referenced. The cost, we were informed, was increasing significantly. So, again, the staff perspective is, okay, we have an obligation we have under state statute. Chad is required to feed inmates. It's a good thing. So we have to do that. We have a line item to do it. Staff's job is to figure out the best, most cost-effective way to do it. And when we got the significant cost increase, we met and started to think about what are some alternative ways to deliver that service. And right now, North Central is at least the one that we think has the greatest merit at this point. If that isn't the case, we're going to have some additional evaluation to do. But yes, we need to pay them. I mean, they have to pay their staff. They're going to have to, and that's been another challenge they've had, quite frankly, with staff within the kitchen. That's an area where there's significant other opportunity in the labor market for people to go. But they need to procure the food. They need to prepare the food and transport it. All of those things come with a cost. But still, on the North Central side, we believe we'd be saving the approximate $1,000 there, and North Central has a bit of a cushion still within the quote that they provided. I did speak with Gary Olson this last week about that, and the staffing was the real area where he thought that could shrink and that cushion could go away. And if that is the case, then we'll have to come back with perhaps with a different plan. But that's where we're at right now. We just wanted to make the committee fully aware.
Anything further? Excuse me. All right, thank you. With that, if there's no objection from the body, I would like to move up 7C on the agenda, if that would work for everyone. Any objection? All right, thank you. And first of all, I would like to say congratulations. Sheriff got sworn in last week, was it Tuesday? And it was a good time. Then Thursday, we had the retirement party for Sheriff Parks, so it's a good week last week. So I'd like to personally say thank you for
Thank you.
for taking on the responsibility that you now have and being our new sheriff. With that, I'll turn it over.
Thanks, I'm looking forward to it. And thank you to those of you that were able to attend. I appreciate you being there at the swearing-in ceremony. So a little update on where we're at. Following my swearing-in last week, I named my chief deputy, and that is Bill Milhausen. Those of you who have been here, met him in different capacities, Bill was the captain of the communications division, and right now he's kind of pulling double duty. So he's doing some of his captain work and chief deputy work, and I'm doing some of the chief deputy work and the sheriff work just until we get through this awkward transition period. In his role, there's a statutory requirement that someone be named the undersheriff of Marathon County. So it's not a paid position. It's a designation. In the event that something were to happen to me, that person is in place and things can continue to move forward. He has all of the authority in order to fulfill the statutory obligations of our sheriff's office. So Bill was sworn in as the undersheriff last week as well. Again, you don't want to confuse them, the chief deputy and undersheriff. One is just a statutory requirement. Yesterday, I had the privilege of promoting my first lieutenant. So the lieutenant that I promoted is a deputy by the name of Sam Wellhofer. Sam has been with our office for right around a total of almost 6 years now, and he's been on the dive team. He's been on mobile field force. He's been on a number of different roles, but his most recent and biggest position he had or challenge was that of our Rib Mountain deputy. So the Marathon County Sheriff's Office contracts dollar for dollar a position with the town of Rib Mountain. And Sam has been in that role and providing law enforcement services there. He's been doing a great job. And because of that work, they actually approached us and they asked to expand that to another deputy. So in July, we'll be adding another deputy there paid by the town of Rib Mountain in order to provide law enforcement services in the town. I'm going to ask that Sam take over some of the leadership of that because he has built those relationships and he has such a strong connection to the town. So that's good. So what's coming next is right now we are in the middle of soliciting individuals for promotion to captain to fill Bill Milhausen's position, the one that he vacated. After that position is filled, we'll then need to fill a lieutenant position because the captains come from the lieutenant rank. And then at that point, I believe we should be pretty stable for a while in our promotions and the movement within our office. We just hired 2 deputies this week. Ben Slumpkiss came from the Wausau Police Department, and he was with them for, I believe, 5 or 6 years. Brings a lot of great experience and certifications with him. He's in training right now, as is, we have a new deputy, part-time deputy that's going to work in court security. Her name is Morgan Day, and she's got kind of a neat background. Her dad was a Dane County deputy for 30-some years, 29 years, I believe it was. And she's had a passion for law enforcement, it appears from everything that I saw on her resume, for a very long time. So we welcome Morgan as well. With that, I think we only have 1 vacancy within the patrol division, and we're working on filling that right now. In the jail, we do have a number of vacancies, but the deputy jail administrator is here. I believe that this week we have, between the next couple of weeks, 3 to 4 corrections officers coming on, and where we've really struggled is in getting female corrections officers. I believe all 4 of them are female, 3 or 4?
3.
3? Okay. So we're making inroads there and getting applications. just a little bit short in communications yet. I believe there's 3 positions in communications that are in need of filling. But I feel better now than I have in quite a while, and I know that we're moving forward in getting those filled. So that's just a real brief update of where we are at the sheriff's office. Unless you have specific questions about what's going on, I'm happy to take any of them.
First of all, congratulations. I already said it once, but I'll say it again for public. Congratulations, Bill, on your promotion.
Sir?
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move on to 7, educational presentations and committee discussion. A, uniform addressing initiative. So it was either last month, or it might have been the month before, we had some people asking about updates on the uniform addressing. Uniform addressing, the guy right back there, his name is Craig McEwen. Craig, when did we start that initiative? That was 4 years ago, 5 years ago? 5?
2016.
Yeah, 5 years ago.
5.
2016 when the board took over. Yeah, 2015 probably started the discussion. That predated me. You guys went down that path before I got started.
And you guys made sure I was the very last guy to get my address, so. The middle of it? Well, that didn't fit my narrative, so I can't. So yeah, with that, I guess I'll turn it over.
Yeah, we'll have Preston come up, and Bill, you gonna come up as well? So this was probably one of the largest projects that Marathon County undertook in the public safety. The reason you're getting the update, public safety was designated as the committee to provide policy guidance throughout this process, and it was a very intense process of engaging communities and looking at statutory evaluation, and it also had the infamous, it was infamously responsible for ending up in the Supreme Court. So this effort went all the way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court about whether or not Marathon County had the authority to do this, and we did, and we moved forward. So I'll turn it over to Preston.
Thank you. I am Preston Vandyvoort. I'm the GIS coordinator in conservation planning and zoning. At the time in 2016, I was the addressing guy that readdressed 25,000 people. So in your packet, I just want to frame it. In your packet is about a brief summary about the report, how we successfully made uniform addressing work throughout the county. And then we're going to tackle on the policy implementation and tracking outcome. So part of the report is the communication. Sorry. It's just going to do a brief introduction with it. Many new faces on the Public Safety Committee. Okay. All right. So how did we conquer this massive project? First is the project management. And then we developed special teams. We have the communications teams. The communications teams was from communication, but the library played a significant role with it. All the public libraries had was the information hub. They would have pamphlets, resources there, and then people could come ask questions about how do I change my address, or how do I change addresses. Then we have the information team, technology team, which was 911, CPZ, tackling the 911 dispatch system, how to integrate it with the new addresses, along with adopting the new address system. The implementation team was boots on the ground, installing all the address signs. Then we had the legal team led by us, Michael Pertner, along with Scott Corbett, developing ordinance language, along with litigation challenging from Rib Mountain, and we won. And then the finance team of how to develop funding for the project, how we tapped into the Environmental Resource Fund for $1.2 million. This is a big key one, this planning with the stakeholder input. We had the municipal advisory group. They were tackling all with the road naming. We had to change about 650 plus road names to have consistency across Marathon County. This deals with the duplicate road names such as Pine Street, Pine Boulevard, Pine Lane. Also, we had the road connectivity throughout the municipalities. The road name would change based on which municipality you were on. So we would want to have one single unique road name. This is kind of like up in the Hamburg area where we had Hamburg using, there was the Johnson, Rebrock in Hamburg area, where there were 3 different road names such as Boss, Emerald, or Wootsburg. And we all decided that Wootsburg would be the adopted name, so it was cooperation amongst towns to come up with a road naming. And we had the implementation plan, which established how we were going to tackle the project from on the ground. Another big communication plan was the adoption or development of the mymarathoncountyAddress.org. This was a lifesaver for us. Such a big project. We put all our information, public meetings, and we took this to the Towns Association, villages, town halls. I mean, we were doing the circuit for about 2 years, explaining what uniform addressing is and how we were going to do it. Thanks to the Sheriff's Department having our backs, along with administration and CPZ. This was a multi-department effort. It was just not CPZ. It was, I would say, at least 7 departments helping us strive forward. And then we just got the lessons learned. With such a big project, we need experts. To kick this off was the UW Center for Public Engagement and the Wisconsin Institute for Public and Services. This framed the question for the county board of how to tackle uniform addressing. This was big just to get the conversation rolling in county board to adopt uniform addressing. On the manufacturing installation with 25,000 addresses, it took about 2 years. It took 2 years to start in the east and work our way to the west to get this project done. And then the communication with public stakeholders. We need buy-in, cooperation from the towns in the emergency service management advisory group as well. They were formed. The municipalities came up with the road naming. Emergency services came up with the design of the sign. The placement needs to be visible because at times there are no signs. There were signs next to the house. There were plaques. And obviously for emergency services, we needed to be visible to know what location they're at. And then I'll dovetail into the question that we were asked for throughout the policy and tracking. The public safety back in 2019 adopted administrative guidelines to help us form or maintain the uniform addressing project. And this is where I'll tackle on the efforts to eliminate duplicate addressing and correct addressing errors on an ongoing basis. We have a policy in place for any new road name that comes in. It needs to get approved from CPZ, just the name, so it doesn't duplicate anywhere else. Also, if it's a continuation of a road, that road name of the existing road continues with that new development for new subdivisions, stuff like that. Tracking addresses. We have address changes. We have a policy in place for changing a person's address. Typically, this is based on how we determine an address is how your driveway intersects the public road. And for like development, if somebody has 40 acres and they're subdividing into 10-acre lots, and their driveway was once down the middle of the 40, and now they're moving it to the whole east side of the 40, which is about 600 feet, that would prompt us to change our address for sequential numbering. So we have, the project ended in 2019-ish. We only had a handful of addresses that we needed to change. And I just want to make it clear, when we're talking about Marathon County system, it's the 40 towns that participated in the uniform addressing, along with the village of Stratford in the village of Elderon. So we're not talking about the incorporateds, the cities and the villages that opted out. Dealing with the site address, we have our addressing tool inspector. So when we create an address, we can verify that it doesn't exist anywhere else, and we can massage the data to make it right, because that was our biggest thing, is we do not want duplicate addressing. So we can overwrite the tool and make sure that we do not have duplicate addressing throughout Marathon County and the towns. That's basically what I've got. It was based on the strong policy and administrative guidelines that help us maintain our system, because we don't want to go back to where we came from. I can tell you that. And I'll throw it over to Milhausen for public safety and responses.
Thanks, Preston. I guess first of all, I just want to say Preston, Dave Mack, CPZ staff were absolutely amazing throughout this project. I had not worked with their department at all. 2 weeks before actually taking my position as captain, I was doing a little shadowing with Captain Dale Wisniewski, and he says, "Hey, why don't you come along? This uniform addressing thing is going to be really fun. This is something we're going to be doing." And then I got pretty immersed along with CPZ in that. And Preston, you guys did a fabulous job setting us up for success. Obviously, very quickly, the sheriff's office became the face of the uniform addressing project. Most people immediately turned it towards public safety, which it was a huge part of it, but there were a lot of other reasons that Preston laid out as well. So with regards to that, data prior to uniform addressing going into place, I do not have as far as emergency response times, because at the same time we were changing our computer-aided dispatch system. All of our new software for that changed in the fall of 2019. So about the time we started going live with uniform addressing, when it finally started to end. So you guys have also asked over time to provide some statistical data about what our emergency response times look like, because that's often been a topic for our rural departments. So I apologize, it's taken a long time to extract that data, but I do have some. I will give you some handouts before you leave today so you guys can digest some of that. But what I want to say is, with regards to the uniform addressing project, is prior to this, we had multiple duplicate road names, similar road names, and exact same address numbers. And we did have multiple situations where we dispatched emergency services to the wrong addresses, because the people that were calling didn't know what township they were in. They didn't know what the nearest crossroad was. They just knew, I'm in front of this number of this house on this road. Like Preston said, not everybody participated in uniform addressing. For all of those entities that do participate, the 40 townships and the 2 municipalities, we have not, I'm proud to say, we have not had a wrong dispatch or a misdiagnosis, if you will, of an address since that time in those municipalities. That's not to say we still do have issues in the city of Wausau. People don't know if they're on First Avenue or First Street, separates by the river. So my dispatch staff does a great job trying to ascertain as to where they are. But those are hurdles that we try to overcome. I am not standing up here saying we don't have those situations still currently existing. But the project by large, for the rural part of the county that did participate, it's been a success. It's also been a success for our deputies and our emergency responders. We dispatch for 80 entities, and for them finding the address, looking for the blue sign that's consistent from township to township in the same area or on the building. And then when we respond to commercial buildings, they're also on the back of strip malls. We never knew when we had an open door and we would respond, we never knew on the back of a building what door was what. Oftentimes there was no name on the back of a door, a service entry door, and there was definitely not an address back there on a strip mall. So when we would go for a burglar alarm or something like that, we didn't know which door to actually even be checking. So now the front and the rear of every one of those is documented with the same blue sign, which has enhanced that response. I appreciate the acknowledgement to taking a new position. I've worked with a lot of you on projects in the last 6 years in my role as captain of communication, and I look forward to working with you going forward. Sheriff Billup did say that we're both pulling some double duty here for a couple of months. I would like to introduce Lieutenant Ryan Berdahl. He is the captain in the communications division. I'm sorry, the lieutenant in the communications division at this time. So he is going to be heavily weighed on to kind of help me keep my head above water as we move forward, because as you guys are well aware, we've got several large projects still going on in the communication division. So I will do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible, but feel free to reach out to Lieutenant Berdahl as well if you have any questions. And I'm open to answer whatever questions I can as it relates to the topics at hand.
First of all, Preston, you did a great job. It was a huge undertaking when it all went down. And I will also say you answered my questions. Chief Deputy, that's right, I should know this. Chief Deputy, it's hard, I got to get used to this. Chief Deputy Milhausen answered my questions as far as the responses, because that was the main thing. There was some pushback, some of the townships. I went to a couple township meetings in my area, obviously, and there was some pushback. And anytime you change things, you're going to have some pushback. That's just how it is. They had some warranted things, but this is the main thing was the safety. So I was happy to hear that. We have had zero. So that was my main thing I wanted to hear. So with that, I'll open it up to the floor. Go ahead.
I still have my rural hat on, even though I represent most of the city of Mosinee now. I had for over 10 years a lot of rural people. So when this started, there were a lot of PO'd people. I'm hoping that has changed a little bit. Part of it was that they didn't think it was consistent. They said there were mistakes. So I don't know, if the signs were consistent. Some, people like to complain and they don't always know what they're complaining about. Two questions. One of the complaints was that UPS and FedEx couldn't find addresses on GPS. Has that changed?
Yeah, so Preston, and actually as it came to be was that we did some digging with Google. We ended up ultimately having an inside source. I can't remember who it was now. I think maybe, was it you? Yeah. So somebody had an inside source with Google, and we found out basically there was nothing we could do to control when Google goes out and pulls that data from GIS. So our hands were kind of tied with that as to how soon they would show up on GPS devices. But I can tell you, I know that now I haven't heard of anything in the last several years anyhow where there's been any issues with regards to that. And I know that they're pulling that data, for example, by us. The roundabout's already on the Google map at 34 in dB. So, I mean, it's coming quick. They're extracting that information, I think, a lot faster now. But there were issues, yeah. There were issues with people trying to use their phones, and but that is why there again, I give a lot of credit to CPZ. They created a document that you could go online and you could type in either way, either your new address and it would convert to your old, or you could type in your old address and it would convert to your new. And that was very beneficial. That is still a tool that's up to this day, I do believe.
Yep, my Marathon County address did go down because of the years, but we have that tool on CPZ's front page and on our addressing page. So that is a tool that's been hit thousands of times. Everybody uses it, so it's going to stay alive for a long time.
One of my regrets is that Mosinee didn't participate. I would have liked a fancier street name other than Old Highway 51. So my other question is, and Preston, this is probably in your purview, the duplication of street names when there are applications for street names, is that also in all the municipalities like Wausau, Mosinee?
We have a verbal agreement with the cities and villages that not to duplicate with their own name. But like I said, push comes to shove, they may not ultimately go forward with that. But right now we have a good relationship and everybody's keen on what we did with the uniform addressing project, and they agree that they're not going to duplicate any more roads.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
If I can just say one thing, Mr. Chair, one of the reasons we wanted to do this presentation is talk about, because we do have a lot of large projects the board has identified to move forward. This was a large project that went exceedingly well. It was very difficult. I think we probably all pushed a lot of that out. But, some of the lessons learned, I think Preston and Bill made references, the immense amount of outreach between, CPZ and sending out postcards to every person, every address that was going to be impacted. The website, we hired a communications person specifically for this to handle questions from the media, work with us on the website. We recognized the value there. The library did a ton as the point of contact in the rural area. And then, I think Bill coined the term the traveling roadshow. I can't remember I remember how many meetings I went to in Weston alone to talk about what we thought was the value even for the municipalities. But that was a big lesson for administration, was the real immense value in planning, which is outlined here, getting the very clear direction from the county board in terms of what are the guiding principles through this, because there were a lot of opportunities to compromise, I'll say. And, it was really helpful to have the county board essentially have adopted this mantra of what is uniform addressing about? It's about getting the right service to the right location at the right time. And when decisions got difficult and there were conversations taking place, it was really easy to go back and say, okay, this is a tough decision. How would it help? What does it mean with respect, or how is it going to impact our performance toward that goal, that overarching goal of right service, right location, right time? And then everyone in the room could coalesce around that and we'd find our way through it. But staff did an exceedingly excellent job across all the various departments. But I don't know if maybe a good place to wrap up is, do we foresee any policy questions, any need for guidance to come back to this committee relative to uniform addressing in the near future from either of your perspectives?
And I think we're set fairly well.
Yeah, I do not, but I don't want it to go unnoticed that the courage and the leadership from you, Lance, and also from the county board, this was not easy. I know there were a lot of phone calls late at night to county board members. Gene, you alluded to that. I know I got cornered a lot. I know that CPZ, at some points, I think they felt a little comfortable that there were some uniforms at some meetings. But there was a lot of courage and leadership that kept us moving. It would have been really easy just to throw in the towel when we got the pushback we did, but I think everybody did the right thing. I really do. If I could just talk about I'm going to give these handouts. These are in minutes when you see them. So there's green, there's 2 sheets of green and 2 of orange. The green are probably most important to you. So the green is going to show the dispatch from the time they're dispatched to the time they're en route. And then it lists EMS services. And I just did EMS, not fire, not police on this. So you'll see there's a running total. It's by month. At the far left, it's the total average. And I just want to let you know, when you look at it, that's the green sheet. The orange sheet is once they are en route out their building till they're on scene at the emergency. So that's the two differences if you look at the green and the orange that you'll see. I know there's been a lot of questions about whether or not that's improved, it's gone down, there's been finger pointing, who's doing good, who's doing bad. You're gonna see, I don't care who it is, there's fluctuation, and there's things that I think when we really start to drill down in, which I did not do, what was the staffing? And I'm just gonna pick on it because it's right at the top, Athens Ambulance. What was their staffing in 2019 versus 2021? I don't know that. All I can tell you is what we pulled out for data as to how long it took them to go en route and how long it took them to get there. We did have to, I will tell you, our system is not set up for this to be done very easy. Countless hours from one of my supervisors and myself to come up with this, because we had to pull out some gross erroneous data that can be human error from my dispatch staff. It can be from the first responders themselves. Not saying I'm en route, not saying I'm on scene. There were some that we knew were out of the, it's only a 4-minute drive from the house or the ambulance bay to the scene, but it was 58 minutes for them to get on scene once they went en route. So somebody just forgot to arrive themselves. So we pulled out all of those high and low variables that we then had to go in manually to make sure on the radio, then we compared it with radio traffic if we had it available to make sure that, yeah, they were on scene a lot before that, but we can't go back and change it in CAD. So we pulled those out to give you the best data that we feel we could provide you. You guys can digest this. More than willing to come back and talk about it at a later time. Phil Rittmeister from Emergency Management has also, had interest in this. He has these documents. I think that conversation is going to move forward maybe there too, because there's some other things looking. This is all in tune with the topic that has come up a few times about county-wide EMS. So that's where a lot of these numbers were asked to be. Yes, ma'am.
For some of the new members, some of the delay is if one unit doesn't respond or if people don't respond, it used to be, 14 minutes? Now it's down to 7. What is that they could have to go and look for another municipality, or can you explain that?
Yep, so it used to be from the time we would page, they had 8 minutes to go en route. We cut that down to 4 minutes. And we also even went further than that they need to acknowledge the page right away. If they don't acknowledge the page, we're going to check again. There's not an exact set time frame that we check again, but we check, hey, did you acknowledge the page? If we don't get an acknowledgement of a page, then we just go on right away to get services going from another entity. When I came in as the captain, I was seeing situations where 8 minutes would go by. Now we paged the next one on the list. 8 minutes would go by. Now we're at 16, and we still don't have anybody en route. And we went back then, we had a 911 subcommittee. We went to them and said, we got to do something better than this. So that's what we're running with right now is they have to acknowledge the page and be en route in 4 minutes. So. And we're running into the problems with, staffing, and now Marshfield, I'll use Marshfield as an example. Marshfield now is not as willing as they have been to back up our Stratfords and Spencers and things like that, because a lot of times they've got both ambulances out and they have to serve the city of Marshfield. So if that's the case, they won't roll to cover us on the west end, so. But other than that, I can shut up and let you guys get on with it.
I think it's important to acknowledge Supervisor McEwen also. I know he was the chair of the Public Safety Committee and took a brunt of this load when people weren't real happy. So I would just like to say thank you for that, Craig. Well, thanks for that. We can look at these at our own discretion. Anything further I have? All right, with that, we'll move on. We'll go to 7B, Public
Hey, Matt?
Defender. Oh, go ahead.
Can you make sure one gets in my box, please? Bruce Lamont?
Yes, we will make it so.
Thank you.
Yep. With that, we'll move on to 7B, Public Defender Evaluation Process Update.
I'll be very brief here. Just to remind everyone, I'm sure you can recall, we've had discussions about one of the kind of bottlenecks within our justice system is the lack of local attorneys able to take criminal appointments, either through the public defender's office or through county appointments, and how that's impacted our case processing. And I kind of made reference to this before with the first item you had, that resolution, how one of the pieces of that resolution was actually addressing issues within the public defender's office to fill vacant positions with more attorneys through raising the market rate for those positions, similar to the DA's office. But outside the public defender's office in that resolution, it called for the increase in wage as well. All those things are trying to solve, as is this update, that issue of getting someone, an attorney, appointed as quickly as possible so that they can get that legal advice, the defendant can get that legal advice, and then their case can proceed as efficiently as possible through the justice system. So this is one local thing we had put in place, and this is a credit to our local public defender's office. The process had been, if an individual would show up to court, they would be ordered at their initial appearance. You'd be asked, do you want an attorney? Yes. Well, here's information about the public defender's office. And if you were out of custody, you would be directed to go there. And while it's not far from the courthouse, sometimes things come up in individuals' lives, and for whatever reason, they don't get to the public defender's office, and they might find themselves at the next court date and be like, "Oh man, I still don't have my lawyer," and then they show up and they talk to Molly's in the back. They meet with Molly and they'd say, "I still want a lawyer, but I haven't even made it to the public defender's office to be evaluated." And sometimes when people go for those evaluations, they don't qualify. So then the case, you can see it just snowballs in terms of not moving forward. So one of the changes we put in place, working with our local public defender's office, they got, I believe, an intern or some additional funding for this, but they have 2 days a week now, starting last week. They're going to have someone other than the attorney that's responsible for conducting intake for the individuals that are in custody, someone present within our courthouse during that period of time, so that when the judge says you should go meet with the public defender's office, they can literally do that before leaving this building, at least for 2 days a week. I don't have any updates on what, if any, successes we've seen. I spoke with our local attorney manager from the public defender's office earlier this morning, and my understanding is they had a pretty light days, the 2 days last week where this staff person was available, but our hope is that we can show some positive impact from this new strategy, and that it will help people get lawyers assigned either through the public defender's office more promptly, or in my mind, what they're going to learn more quickly is, hey, you don't qualify. So then the next step is what's called an indigency hearing. And I know some of the members on the committee that have been on the committee for a while have heard that term before, but we can go down that path more promptly as well. So we can kind of eliminate the wasted kind of non-productive time within that initial stage of the representation. But I would have liked to have been able to provide you more information, but right now it looks like it's going to be 2 days a week. We have a conference room reserved so that it's right next to the intake courtroom where people can then meet with that person, get that evaluation done, and hopefully kind of know what the next steps of their criminal justice, going through the criminal justice process look like for their case, but that's where we are.
Any question on that? Go ahead. Excuse me.
I just had a question on, so that's, you said that's a state-funded position?
Right,
The
so-
public defenders there?
A great question, complicated answer, right? So the funding mechanism for individuals who are indigent as defined or as referenced within Wisconsin statute. If I am a criminal defendant and I have essentially very little, if any, assets, I'm unemployed, have no assets, I qualify as indigent, the state public defender's office, I'm entitled to counsel through the state public defender's office. That can be a lawyer that is funded and employed by the state of Wisconsin, or there are also local lawyers, not enough of them, but there are local lawyers that take appointments from the state public defender's office for that indigent population. That's the kind of, if you think about it, those are the people that truly are indigent, don't have financial resources to represent themselves. The next level is that people that are still, for common language here, still under the poverty line, financially distressed, but not to the level that they'd get state public defender representation. Counties are obligated to appoint and provide for funding for those individuals for legal representation. It's a lot of times, it's the same lawyers, the same private lawyers that take public defender's office cases, take these county-appointed cases as well, but the amount that you're paid to take them goes up. You get a higher rate for those county-appointed cases. So yes, it's state-funded for the public defender's office, but the counties have a financial obligation for that kind of next step up. And in that resolution that you recommended to the full board for its consideration later this month, the recommendation within that resolution through that coalition of justice system stakeholders at the state level is to kind of increase the compensation for lawyers on both sides at both parts, that low indigent level as well as the county appointed level, to kind of get more people to take those cases.
Okay, so like the higher income people would be the ones that would go through the county? In other words, what you're saying?
Higher than the indigent population, but let me be very clear, to qualify for each, you need to be in a rough way. I mean, you need to be in a pretty dire financial straits to qualify for, certainly for public defender's office representation, but also for county appointed counsel. And essentially for county appointed counsel, the county fronts the legal costs. So the judges will, if they meet with me and they determine I'm eligible for a county appointed lawyer, they'll look at the case and say, based on the nature of this case, I'll appoint Attorney Purner, although he doesn't take these, just using him for an example, Attorney Michael Purner to represent you, but I'm capping your legal expenses at $2,500. For people that don't qualify under that indigency standard for that county appointed rate, we're all responsible for procuring our own legal defense or representing ourselves, which is permitted by the Constitution.
Thank you.
Anything further?
I'll come back with more information when we have a little bit more experience with it.
All right, then moving on to 7D, that was my rush to get something in there because Lance and I had talked earlier last month and couldn't get my email, so I didn't know where we were at. I had some issues with my iPad last week. So anyway, we're not doing that. That's actually going to be discussed next month, and we'll have the women's community. We have all three of them, correct?
You'll have the Women's Community, Judicare, Wisconsin Judicare, and North Central Community Action Program all come at your February meeting to provide an overview of the services they provide in connection with the contracts that were referenced, the nonprofit contracts that were referenced in the budget discussions.
So that we can get information on that for next year's budget process. So with that, we're at 8A. Committee members are asked to bring future ideas for discussion. 8B, next meeting is Tuesday, February 6th, 1:30. Anybody have any announcements or anything they want to say before we take number 9? Go ahead.
Just an idea for a future agenda item to have an update on the youth detention center, if we have any other counties that have decided to contract with us.
So we'll put that on February's. So, yep, all right. Anything further? Then I will take number 9. Motion to adjourn. I have a second? I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.